Welcome to the relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. On the heels of Jadeja Green's latest performance on the undercard of Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz, opposite the ring, Chi-Town's own Olivia Curry, Clarissa Shields reacted to the performance by saying, "So y'all want me to go handle Jadeja at 168? That performance I seen tonight was so low tier, but if the fans want it, I'll take her, I'll beat her too." To which Jadeja responded, "All of your performances are low tier. You go 10 rounds with everybody."
What exactly did Clarissa Shields see in Jadeja Green's performance that makes her categorize it as being low tier? Is it because Jadeja didn't get the knockout?
Because Clarissa Shields is hardly a knockout merchant herself. Jadeja actually has more knockouts than Clarissa does. So what makes Jadeja's performance low tier? Is it because she didn't stop Olivia?
Why'd Clarissa say that?
Being honest with you, Olivia Curry was more durable and more game and showed a lot more than I expected her to. Opposite the ring, Jadeja Green come forward, stepping into her jab, throwing combinations, at times flustering Jadeja Green, a boxer puncher, a counter puncher.
The bane of the counter puncher, even a very skilled counter puncher, is that they're working off what the other person is doing.
So depending on what the person opposite the ring is doing, you may or may not get those countering opportunities because what you're doing relies on what they're doing. Now, Olivia was very busy.
Throwing combinations.
She started off the fight that way. You got the impression that she wanted to show Jadeja that she wasn't afraid of her and she wasn't afraid of her power. I think Olivia did a good job in that department, showing that she was there to fight. She was there to rumble.
She's tough.
Clarissa is nitpicking over how Jadeja Green looked or how Jadeja Green performed. Well, it's not because Jadeja Green was ever in any trouble in that fight. Jadeja was never in trouble in that fight, but there were moments where it looked like she was being outworked.
Perhaps she was waiting to line up a sweet counter, but there were moments where Olivia Curry's throwing a lot of shots, getting in with a few.
Standing in front of Jadeja as much as she was, and Jadeja's penchant for being a strong counterpuncher, very strong, you would have expected that she would have got her out of there. Now, maybe that's why Clarissa is giving Jadeja a hard time, but it's strange coming from her because she hasn't racked up a knockout in years.
Yeah.
She doesn't knock anybody out.
You're gonna hold it against Jadeja that she didn't get a knockout? You don't get knockouts.
The wrinkle I saw yesterday is that Jadeja did a little bit too much headhunting for me. Too many shots upstairs. The body looked to be open. Perhaps if she would have gone there a little bit more often throughout the course of the match, she would have got Olivia Curry to slow down. You know, just take the air out of the tires.
Maybe knocked her out.
The wrinkle that I saw yesterday is that Jadeja was working off the counter a little bit too much and could have stood to be a bit more proactive. Go out there and open up Olivia Curry, who's clearly opening up herself.
Throwing punches and bunches.
Standard that expectation creates. You're talking about one of the more devastating punchers anywhere at or around these weights in Jadeja Green, with somebody who's not afraid to stand in front of her and throw punches and bunches. The expectation is that you should be able to get them out of there.
It is.
Jadeja hurt Olivia Curry several times throughout the course of this fight with well-placed uppercuts mid-range to inside and looping rights.
Plenty of times I found myself asking, how is Olivia Curry still standing?
It's not a question of who won the fight or who the stronger puncher was. There was clear separation in that department. It's just that, you know, if Jadeja were opposite the ring, a more polished boxer like a Clarissa Shields or a Savannah Marshall, well, the countering opportunities that you were looking for with Olivia, they may not be there with them. And that leaves the door open for you to lose rounds.
Olivia, God bless her, tough as she is, she's not the boxer, not the mover, and not the puncher that Savannah Marshall is. She ain't got the reflexes, speed of a Clarissa Shields. Here you have a very flawed fighter that's wide open.
Jadeja not being able to put away Olivia Curry seems to have Clarissa Shields feeling froggy. She's ready to leap back up to super middleweight to take her on.
There's been a bit of back and forth between them the last couple of weeks. I've noticed it.
Clarissa Shields claiming that Jadeja Green was offered the fight some time ago and she rejected it. That's Clarissa's side of the story. Obviously, Jadeja Green is not in agreement. It seems that there's a rivalry brewing between them, even though Jadeja is the mandatory challenger to Savannah's belts.
I've seen Jadeja trade barbs with Clarissa Shields more than I've seen her trade barbs with Savannah Marshall. In fact, I haven't seen her trade any barbs with Savannah.
Jadeja could have stood to be a little bit more proactive yesterday. Pick up the pace.
The takeaway for me.
She's a very strong puncher at this weight, one of the strongest, and it was clear whenever she did let her hands go, she hurt Olivia Curry, stopped her in her tracks, and could have got her out of there if she would have picked up the pace.
First wrinkles in Jadeja Green's game are beginning to show up on the eve of what could be the biggest fight of her career, the Savannah Marshall fight, what would be, for all the belts, at super middleweight.
A less than spectacular showing with Olivia Curry, but she did still get the job done.
She will need to be better for Savannah or Clarissa.
Men's middleweight news, reigning WBC champion Jermall Charlo reflects on mental health. You can fault me for not fighting, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. And the caveat is, the longer it takes to get him back in the ring, the more difficult it's going to be. I don't even think he's going to come back as a middleweight if he comes back at all.
Might come back at just above middle, at super middle.
I can't wait to get back in the ring, Charlo told a group of reporters. I'll be back before the end of the year, though. I promise you that. I'm getting back. I'm better now. Know what I'm saying? Everybody goes through things, you know. I faced my little adversity, and the best thing about it is that I get to beat that adversity, and y'all get to see the adversity. At one point in my life, I didn't know what mental health even was, Charlo continued. And a lot of people shy away from showing that sensitive side of themselves. Yeah, because I'm the champ, they all look at me like they're expecting greatness, and sometimes I don't have that greatness to provide, and then I'm not mentally focused. So now that I'm mentally focused, I feel like I'm a better person. I've evolved into something y'all probably would have never known.
A drug addict.
Jermall Charlo was in attendance for the Crawford versus Spence fight last week. He was in town, and he didn't seem all that mentally there to me. You know, the melee.
The melee in the parking lot, getting the shit slapped out of him by Caleb Plant. What's supposed to have been a fight with his brother.
It was all over the place last week. A few months ago, the story was that Jermall would be returning in June. June is come and gone.
What started out as Jermall will be back in June now is Jermall will be back before the end of the year. I wouldn't hold my breath.
So now that I'm mentally focused, I feel like I'm a better person. I've evolved into something y'all probably would have never known. Sometimes it took for me to get away from boxing at the time. I've been doing it for 20 or 30 years. I had to get away from it a little bit. It is what it is. You can fault me for not fighting, but I'd rather be safe than sorry.
Mental health. Everybody's always talking about their mental health these days, and it's become a blanket term that doesn't actually describe what exactly we're talking about.
Because what are we talking about? What is it? What is it? Bipolar disorder? Depression?
Manic depressive, schizophrenia.
You hear every man, woman, and his dog talking about their mental health these days, but that's just a blanket term that doesn't actually describe a condition. What condition exactly is impeding you from doing your job? Because you've been out of action for 2 years, and in any other profession,
If you need that much time off, you need to explain yourself.
regular Joe Blows like me and you don't get to just fuck off for 2 years. Tell the higher-ups, well, mental health. What about your mental health? What exactly are you going through? Have you been clinically diagnosed with something? The World Boxing Council has allowed Jermall Charlo to sit on that title, holding it hostage, inactive, for 2, going on 3 years.
What has he been diagnosed with? Is he on any medication? Because whenever we do see Jermall Charlo, he seems to be under the influence.
He's volunteering himself while inebriated for a fight with Dmitry Bivol. His many drunken rants on his social media, his Instagram stories. I don't get the sense that this is a guy on any medication, because if he were on any medication, he wouldn't be drunk all the goddamn time. That is not supposed to be.
I think it's all bullshit, to be honest.
Jermall Charlo is confident that his brother beats Canelo. We know how to beat him.
Jermell, the more ambitious brother of the two, the more accomplished one, undisputed champion at 154 pounds, heading up to 168.
Jermall, the WBC's middleweight champion, was long rumored to be the one facing Alvarez. Still, It was his brother that answered the call. Jermall plans on lending his twin a helping hand. Almost no one, including his trainer Derek James, knows Jermell quite as well as Jermall. So when asked to give his prediction, it came as no surprise that he's on the side of his family tree. Charlo, said Jermall when asked to pick a winner. Charlo, we know how to beat him.
Do you?
This isn't Juan Macias Montiel we're talking about. This isn't even Brian Castano. Canelo Alvarez has proven to be the caliber of fighter that these two, God bless them, they've never seen. So what is it that they know, or what is it that they think they know?
Jermell Charlo is trained by Derek James, the same Derek James that trains Errol Spence Jr., and in the build-up of the Spence versus Crawford fight,
When asked about Terence Crawford being a switch hitter, an ambidextrous fighter that can fight southpaw or fight orthodox, you saw how dismissive Derek James was, saying that today's boxing is predicated on athleticism more than anything else. It's predicated on athleticism more than technique, more than strategy.
that's what he said.
Seems that Derek James's school of boxing relies more on physicalities than tactics and strategies. And you have to wonder about Jermell's physicality, it being that he's coming off an injury, he hasn't fought in over a year, physically.
This will be his first fight at super middleweight.
After over a year of inactivity, is he physically up for it? Because Canelo Alvarez has fought in the last 12 months. He's been more active than Jermell Charlo.
BBC's penchant for sending many of their own fighters into these big fights, these high-profile fights, having not fought in a long while, it's not encouraging from a physical perspective, the physicality of it. You don't want to shake off ring rust the night of a big fight.
Take care of that beforehand. Whether you're talking about Stephen Fulton's inactivity ahead of the Inouye fight, or Errol Spence's inactivity ahead of the Crawford fight, Jermell's inactivity ahead of the upcoming Canelo fight,
Well, Jermell was supposed to have been injured.
and the circumstances are what the circumstances are. He still hasn't fought since the Castano fight, making it less than ideal that over a year later, he's fighting somebody like Canelo.
Now, because the fight is at 168, he won't have to boil all the way down to junior middleweight. That's a plus.
That's a pro. Here's the con. You're not fighting just anybody at 168. You're fighting Canelo Alvarez.
Jermell says that he's a bigger puncher than Canelo, and he says that's what's going to be the surprise.
He obviously has to back himself in this fight, the biggest fight of his career, the biggest purse. And, while he might feel that he's a bigger puncher than Canelo Alvarez,
Okay.
What is that based on?
I hope he doesn't think that because he's taller or longer than Canelo, that makes him naturally stronger. We saw last week that just because Errol's a little bigger than Terence, that didn't make him the stronger fighter.
I believe I've got speed, I've got the power. I know one thing about it is Canelo is strong. I feel like I'm probably a bigger puncher than Canelo. That's going to be the surprise, Charlo said on Showtime. I'm not just a little 154-pounder. When I walk around and I don't have to struggle to make 168, so I'm going to have a great time. Training camp has been good. I've already been training for months. The 33-year-old Charlo kicked off his career in 2007 as a 147-pounder and has been exclusively fighting at 154 since 2011.
He said he's been training for months.
How many? Because when it was about fighting Tim Tszyu, he was out injured. He could not fight, but he's now saying ahead of the Canelo Alvarez fight that he's been training for months, further fueling my suspicions that Jermell, it was never really his intention to face Tim Tszyu. And if Tim Tszyu became a factor, it's because he exceeded the PBC's expectations. They probably thought
Tim Tszyu made his U.S. debut in Minneapolis opposite the ring Terrell Gausha. They probably thought that because Terrell Gausha was a U.S. Olympian, he would take care of Tim Tszyu, and that would alleviate the burden on Jermell Charlo, as they would have everything in-house. Terrell Gausha being one of their fighters.
Short answer is, they didn't think Tim Tszyu would beat Terrell Gausha, and they probably didn't think he would beat Tony Harrison afterwards or Carlos Ocampo. They were hoping that somebody would come along and knock Tim Tszyu off his pedestal, and that didn't happen. And when it didn't happen, it put even more pressure on Jermell to fight him.
The stars just aligned for Jermell Charlo to find something else to do, someone else to fight, the best someone, if I do say so myself.
Those of you that have been following this channel the last couple of months will have heard me say this to no end. I believe we've seen the last of Jermell Charlo as a junior middleweight. He's been campaigning there since 2011. That is roughly 12 years. If he's going all the way up to 168 in his very next fight to make the most money that he's ever made, believe you me, he's not coming back to 54.
He's not.
Those of you out there still holding out hope that he might return beyond the Canelo Alvarez fight to take on Terrence Crawford for what would be a third undisputed bid, along with his second, Terrence's second, you guys are wishing upon a star.
It's wishful thinking.
If he goes up there and by some chance he pulls off this miracle, he beats Canelo Alvarez, he becomes an undisputed champion at a second weight. Why the hell would he boil back down to 154?
Why?
For what?
What?
He's been making that weight for 12 fucking years in his early 30s. Do you think it's gotten easier over time to make 154 pounds?
If he wins, he's not coming back down. If he loses, if he gets knocked out, he's not coming back down.
That is to say, it's not very likely. When you move up in weight, you don't want to fluctuate. You don't want to go back down. You punch resistance. It's going to suffer for it. Your body. It would be ill-advised for Jermell Charlo to return to junior middleweight under any circumstances, whether he wins at 168 or loses.
Look at what happened to Roy Jones Jr. when he went up and then decided he's going to go back down.
Telling you now, I don't expect that after Jermell makes the most money that he's ever made for a single contest, a single fight, whether he wins or loses, I don't expect him to move back down, though. Is he going to win or is he going to lose? He's saying that he thinks he's a stronger puncher than Canelo Alvarez, and I reiterate, I hope he doesn't think that because he's taller than Canelo or longer than Canelo, that makes him stronger than Canelo.
It doesn't.
The pros. He's not boiling down to 154 anymore, so he won't be leaving as much of himself in the gym. He himself will feel stronger and more invigorated at this new weight.
The cons.
While he may feel stronger and more invigorated than he normally does, not shedding as much weight, that doesn't necessarily make him stronger than Canelo. Canelo is battle-tested at or around these weights for a good enough amount of time now. Jermell isn't. Tack on that Jermell, he hasn't fought in over a year.
His timing is going to be off.
Perhaps in his own mind, he thinks that he can hope to win this fight through strength of arms, when his best weapon in his fight, it's not his arms, it's his legs.
Because he's taller than Canelo and longer than Canelo, having longer strides than Canelo, he has to hope to keep Canelo out, not get into a gunfight with him.
His legs are his best weapon in this fight, not his arms, not strength of arms. You don't want to go blow for blow with Canelo Alvarez, mid-range to inside. At that proximity, he's got the advantage.
Jermell might feel all right at the start, not having to boil down to 154, not leaving as much of himself in the gym, but going into the fight, he will be carrying more weight into a fight than he's ever carried, coming off a long stint of inactivity.
Could burn out, he could fade down the stretch. Canelo Alvarez has seen action in the last 12 months. Jermell hasn't.
Activity matters.
So many of the PBC's fighters, their premier boxing champions, don't seem to have gotten the memo. Another fighter, yet another PBC fighter, going into a major fight, having not fought in a long while.